and I will be chairing today's meeting. Could I remind everyone that today's meeting is being live streamed on the City Council website so that the public can observe the meeting without needing to be present. City Plans panel deal with applications from the city centre, as well as the largest and most significant applications the council receive. The aim of the panel is to hear all the relevant information from applicants, members of the public and council officers to help members of the panel make their decisions. Could I now invite members and officers to introduce themselves and mute your microphone once you have done so. Can I start on my left? Daljit, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daljit Singh. I lead the City Centre planning team.
Hi, John Hall, Planning Officer in the City Centre team.
Gillian MacLeod, Transport Development Services Manager.
Councillor Caroline Gruen, Ward Member for Bramley and Stanningley and Panel Member.
Hi everybody, Councillor Katie Dye, Councillor for Killingbeck and Seacroft Ward.
Hi everybody, Councillor Ray Jones, Councillor for Halsworth.
Hello everyone, Councillor Jordan Bowden, representing Roundhay Ward, and I'm here substituting Peter Carwell.
Hello, Councillor Kaylee Brooks, Little London and Woodhouse Ward.
Good afternoon, Lewis Footage, Senior Technical Officer, and I'll be in charge of PowerPoint today.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Colin Campbell, one of the Plans panel members.
Councillor David Blackburn, Farnley Wortley Ward.
Good afternoon, Councillor Barry Anderson, Adeline Wharfdale Ward.
Good afternoon, Andy Booth, Clerk to the panel.
Good afternoon, Amy Davis, Legal Officer.
Good afternoon, Jonathan Carr, Head of Development Management.
Thank you for that, members and officers. Moving on, can we go to item number 1? Andy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Under agenda item number 1, there are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Under item number 2, there is no exempt information on today's agenda. Under item number 3, there are no late items. Moving on to agenda item number 4, could I ask members if they've got any interest to declare? No. Moving on to item 5, apologies for absence. We've got apologies from Councillors Carlisle, Cohen and Maloney. And we've got Councillors Bowden and Jones in attendance as substitute today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andy. Moving on to item 6, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 13th of July. Can I go through it in my usual way, page by page, starting at page 7? Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. And finally, page 10. Is there any matters arising? There being no matters arising, can I ask members, is this accepted as a true record? Yes. Nodding all around? Yes, thank you. Moving on to page 11, agenda item 7. This is a pre-app. Do you want to make any comments at this stage, John? I know it's the developers.
Position statement.
It's a position statement.
It's position statement.
Sorry, Councillor. Yeah, it's coming as a full planning application, and we're presenting it as a position statement.
I'm just trying to move the slides along. There we go. Okay, the proposal is for 100% affordable housing scheme at Quarry Hill in Little London and Woodhouse Ward. Although we're presenting the application as a position statement, further information has been provided in the last couple of weeks, which addresses a number of officer concerns, which I'll cover off in this presentation. Oops, is this working? Yeah, okay, it's a bit slow. The application site lies within the southeast quadrant of Quarry Hill The site is about a 3-minute walk to Leeds City bus station and a 14-minute walk to Leeds train station. It is well connected towards city centre shops and amenities. Okay. The application site is a former council operated car park, which now lies vacant. To the immediate north and under construction is the Soyo scheme, which is a residential led mixed use development. To the south is the Northern Ballet Centre and associated car park, which wraps around the site to the east. St Cecilia Street, which provides access to the site, passes to the west. The next few slides comprise photographs of the site. This image is taken from St Cecilia Street. Starting from the right-hand side of the photograph, you can see the edge of the Northern Ballet Centre, the entrance to Northern Ballet Car Park, the site which sits behind the metal fencing, and then apartment block B of the Soyo scheme, which is under construction. The next photo is taken from the Northern Ballet Centre car park, looking back across the site. The site sits behind the knee-high timber rail in the picture. As you can probably make out, it's a small site. It only measures 0.12 hectares and is constrained by development on all sides. This is another photo from within the car park, which shows a bit more of the facing elevation of the Northern Ballet Centre. And this photo is from St Cecilia Street, up close to the site. The two tower blocks in the background form part of the Saxton Lane development, which was granted planning permission in 2020. In November 2018, the Council's Executive Board approved a report on how commuted sums could be used to support the delivery of affordable housing in the city centre. The report identified suitable council-owned sites, including this site at St Cecilia Street. Following marketing of the site, Legal and General were selected as the preferred bidder to deliver 100% social rented development with money from commuted sums underpinning the scheme. Upon completion, the scheme would be subject to a nominations agreement with the council for 100% of first lets and 60% of subsequent lets, therefore directly supporting residents in housing need on the Leeds Housing Register. There are currently over 26,000 individuals applying for affordable housing through the Leeds Housing Register, with 1,230 new affordable homes required each year. And as members will appreciate, there is a critical need to provide homes available for social rent. So the proposal takes the form of an 11-storey apartment building containing a total of 78 units with a mix of 1, 2 and 3 beds. All the apartments would be social rented, which is considered the most affordable type of affordable housing, being affordable to households on the lowest 10% of earnings. The building would be constructed of a light coloured masonry with dark brick cords, giving it a grid form. The infills would feature moulded panels to break up the flatness of the facade, and all apartments would benefit from floor to ceiling windows. The proposal includes metal perforated wind baffles at the northeast corner of the building. The larger of the wind baffles is visible in this image on the left of the building and reaches a height of 12 metres. The second would sit immediately behind and reach a height of 2 metres. The baffles are necessary to ensure the entry points into Soyo apartment block B are accessible during the winter months. The wind baffles would sit within the development site and not within the adopted highway. The next image is looking north along St Cecilia Street and includes the outline blocks of the Soyo scheme to form a run of buildings. This image shows a new lay-by off St Cecilia Street. The lay-by would serve vehicle drop-off and pick-up, as well as servicing and refuse collections. The lay-by will be subject to a traffic regulation order to ensure it was only used for short-stay parking. The proposal does not include any car parking, which Highways team consider acceptable due to its city centre location and good access to public transport. Cycle parking would be provided within the building at ground floor. The pavement along St Cecilia Street would maintain a width of 2.5 metres to 3 metres. This next image is taken from the southwest, looking back across Quarry Hill, and shows how the building would appear in the wider context. And this is a long elevation drawing, again, just showing how the building compares with neighbouring development in terms of its height and scale. So it's the middle drawing in that plan. And I've included this image as it shows the moulding detail on the infill panel. The applicant is committed to achieving a window reveal depth of 215 millimetres. And I should say we work closely with design colleagues and they consider the latest proposals acceptable. As already mentioned, this is a small and constrained site with development on all sides. As such, the separation distances with neighbouring buildings is tight. This is shown in the above image. The application site is depicted in the bottom right-hand corner. You can see there's a red line marking out the application site. The distance to the Soyo apartment block B is 13 metres and the distance to the facing elevation of Northern Ballet Centre is 11 metres. There is no policy on minimum separation distances between buildings in the city centre, but there's an expectation that development will reflect the character of the area. As you can see, the Soyo scheme includes gaps of 12 and 13 metres to the north. Oops. It doesn't seem to be appearing, but there were a couple of photos I took of similar relationships in the city centre. I don't know if it's actually maybe the next slide along. Let me just have a quick look to see if it's there. Ah, yeah, here we go. So there are, as I say, there are also other examples of similar distances between similar storied buildings in the city centre, including Belgrave Street, where the distance between Havana Residence and Simmons House is 11 metres, and between residential blocks A and B at Mustard Wharf, where the gap is 10 metres. There is evidence, therefore, to suggest that future occupants would be accepting of these relationships as part of the wider established character of the city centre. Moreover, it is considered the potential for any adverse impact is mitigated by the large windows to habitable rooms, which would help to maximise daylight, and the fact most living rooms would be dual aspect and benefit from views looking east and west, where there isn't the same privacy conflicts as shown in this floor plan. The applicant has also submitted a daylight and sunlight report, which concluded that in the context of a dense urban environment, the impact on daylight and sunlight amenity to neighbouring residential properties would be appropriate, and the development would provide acceptable sunlight amenity. Moving. I'm clicking. Oh. I'll go back to the slide that we skipped over, because I just want to touch on the relationship with Northern Ballet Centre. In terms of the impact on Northern Ballet Centre, I had the chance to be shown around the building this week and looked into all rooms which would face onto the proposed development. It is considered most rooms wouldn't be significantly affected from overlooking because they either serve as offices, which are regarded as a less sensitive use, or are fitted with opaque glass. However, there is a dance studio on the top floor, which is worth considering in a bit more detail to ensure members are fully informed. I'm afraid this slide doesn't appear in your printout since I was only on site this week, but the image on the top left-hand corner shows the view from the dance studio. You can see that the top half of the window is transparent with the bottom half fitted with obscure glazing. The affordable housing block would extend along part of the length of the dance studio and 4 windows would face onto it. This is depicted in the right-hand image, which shows the window arrangement of the proposed development superimposed on the facing elevation of the Northern Ballet Centre. The facing windows to the dance studio are highlighted red. The top 2 windows would sit above the dance studio, with direct views only possible if a person is up next to the window looking down, and the bottom 2 windows would face onto opaque glass. Officers therefore consider that there is unlikely to be a significant impact in terms of overlooking. In respect to the ground floor, this would contain a reception area, bike and bin store and plant rooms, as well as 3 apartments which would benefit from a small private terrace. Officers initially had concerns about the level of outlook occupants could expect from these apartments, considering they're at ground floor and there is car parking and service roads on all sides. Let me come on to some section drawings. There we go. However, the applicant has since provided section drawings which show the apartments would likely have an adequate outlook because of differences in ground levels. On the southern elevation facing Northern Ballet, the apartments would sit on a raised platform with ground level slowly rising as the site slopes northwards. Most of the boundary treatments would have a maximum height of 1.1 metres, which would allow views over the top and the sense of sky and openness beyond. Where the retaining wall is higher due to ground levels levelling off on the northern side, the affected flat has an alternative outlook to the east side, which would provide acceptable outlook and daylight to the living area. Although the development is not required to provide any open space since it falls below the 0.5 hectare size threshold set out in Core Strategy Policy G5, it is recognised the provision of balconies and/or a roof garden is desirable. These features have been considered through the planning process. However, the applicant argues are not possible due to cost and management concerns. Despite the lack of on-site external amenity space, other than the small terraces serving the ground floor apartments, residents would benefit from good access to green space within the wider Quarry Hill site, including 0.9 hectares of public realm being delivered as part of the SOYO scheme, which involves a network of interconnecting avenues and courtyards. Most of the areas would be publicly accessible 24 hours a day. However, the courtyards would be closed between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. to protect the privacy of occupants of the surrounding residential blocks. Furthermore, there are public parks within a 5-minute walk of the application site. This includes St Mary's Park to the north over York Road and green space off Railway Street to the south. The parks provide residents with additional green space functionality and offer a good alternative to the more formal spaces set out within Quarry Hill. The green space at Railway Street also includes an outdoor play facility. On the issue of housing mix, the applicant proposes the following: 46 one-bed, 28 two-bed and 4 three-bed. In percentage terms, 3 beds represent 5% of the total number of units. Although not a policy requirement, since the policy only asks for an appropriate mix, this is clearly below the preferred minimum 3-bed target of 20% set out in Table H4 of the core strategy. On this point, officers have sought demand data for 3-bed affordable housing within Leeds city centre. In the absence of an up-to-date strategic housing market assessment, which is currently being prepared, data from the annual Leeds Housing Register report for 2022 to 2023 has been taken. The data is on a ward rather than area basis, and since the site borders both Bermontoffs and Richmond Hill and Hunslet and Riverside, it was considered reasonable to present data from all 3 wards. On page 19 of your information pack, paragraph 8.3.8, shows the number of applications for affordable properties broken down by bedroom requirement. The percentage of applications for 3-bed properties range from 11.7% to 17.8% across the 3 wards, which is proportionately more than the 5% being offered. However, the data also shows that the greatest demand is for 1- and 2-bed properties, with almost 80% of all applications across the 3 wards for 1 and 2 beds. Moreover, the proposal is delivering a significantly more affordable housing than required under policy. Core Strategy Policy H5 requires 7% affordable housing provision within the city centre, which would equate to 5 units. This application would deliver 100% affordable housing, or 78 units. Any increase in 3 beds would also likely result in a reduction in the overall number of affordable units. As such, officers consider there is justification for accepting the proposed mix based on a planning balance. It's worth noting that Krista Jolly from Regeneration Team is on hand to help answer questions in respect to affordable housing provision. In terms of meeting the development sustainability targets, the building would connect into the district heating network. So we received 3 formal objections during the publicity period. These concerned the building design, which has since progressed with input from design officers, and Northern Ballet, who raised concerns that the proposal may impact on their ability to access their parking area. On this, the applicant submitted vehicle tracking drawings showing that articulated vehicles within the legally permitted length would still be able to enter and exit the car park. Other concerns raised by Northern Ballet following the publicity period include overlooking of the dance studio, loss of light to rooms facing the proposed development, and noise disruption to residents of the affordable housing block from late or early vehicle movements. On the noise disruption, the applicant has submitted a noise assessment, which was reviewed by environmental health and found acceptable, and it is expected that noise can be adequately mitigated. The other points have already been addressed in the presentation. We brought the application forward as a position statement to canvass members' views and determine whether there is agreement with the officer assessment. To help aid the discussion, we've set out a series of questions. They include, do members consider the proposed housing mix acceptable? Do members consider the proposed design of the development acceptable? Do members consider the separation distances to the Northern Ballet Centre to the south and Sawyer apartment block to the north acceptable? And do members consider the ground floor flats acceptable in terms of outlook and residential amenity? Depending on comments received and subject to any conditions members may wish to apply, we're also asking whether the application can be determined under delegated powers. Thank you.
Thanks, John. That was a very comprehensive report. Can I invite the applicants, Mr. Brock and Anita Simpson, please, to come forward to the table? I'm sure from the site visits there will be questions.
Crystal could come forward as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
When you've settled in, you're free to address the panel.
Hello, I'm Hannah Cawthorne from Boost by Architects.
Hello, I'm Annette Simpson. I'm Director of Development and Partnerships for Legal and General Affordable Homes.
Hello, I'm Phil Brock from Tetra Tech Planning.
Hello, Nathan Wilkinson from Boost by Architects.
When you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all today. My name is Annette Simpson and I work for Legal and General Affordable Homes. We were established in 2018 to increase the supply, quality and choice of affordable housing across England. The proposal being considered today is for the delivery of 78 social rent homes located in the city centre. These homes we made available to those currently on the council's housing waiting list, as we've heard. We can therefore guarantee that these homes will meet a genuine need within the city of Leeds. Our vision at the Affordable Homes business is that everyone should have a great quality, environmentally sustainable and affordable home from which to build better futures. And that's the vision that really sits at the heart of the proposal that's in front of you today. As well as providing 78 social rent homes within the city centre, the scheme will regenerate a previously developed site in a highly sustainable location, and it is a car-free development. The scheme is energy efficient and will link to Leeds district heating, reducing carbon emissions and importantly ensuring low resident energy costs, which is particularly significant given both the climate emergency and also the cost of living crisis that we're currently facing. The scheme is well designed using high quality materials, and all homes exceed national space design standards and Leeds accessibility standards. There are a number of sort of specific points I would like to raise. The scheme meets the council's objectives in terms of delivering affordable homes. St Cecilia Street site is owned by the council and is one of the sites ring-fenced for 100% affordable housing delivery. L&G were selected as preferred bidder in 2020, and we've been working very closely with the council ever since to bring forward a scheme that specifically addresses the council's vision and the council's objectives. The housing mix addresses the greatest needs within this area of the city. Again, we've worked closely with the council's housing and regen team to develop the scheme before you today. The mix is designed to address those in Band A with the most pressing housing need. Current housing data shows the Little London housing management area has the third highest housing need in Leeds, with the highest demand being for 1 and 2 bedroom properties. And that's really where we have focused our attention, ensuring that there is that the design of the building ensures that we're hitting that need within this particular location. The proposal provides 78 well-designed apartments. Noting the constraints of the site, residential amenity is critically important. The proposed apartments all meet national design space standards and accessibility standards. All 2 and 3 bedroom apartments have Juliet balconies. All apartments have full height windows to maximise natural daylight levels in all apartments. As you've heard, the 3 raised ground floor units have their own external amenity space, and the corner apartments all benefit from dual aspect views. Separation distances have been considered extensively throughout the design process in order to mitigate concerns regarding overshadowing and overlooking. And we think that as has been shown in the officer's presentation, they are of an acceptable distance when you look at the context within which the building is located. And also that the site is located within the SOYO master plan area, so it will benefit from the amenities that are being provided within the area to the north. Legal and General Affordable Homes will own and manage the building in the long term, and we are working in partnership both with the council but also Homes England to bring forward this site. We appreciate the officer recommendation for a delegated level decision today, subject to members' views, but I just wanted to let you know that this is relying on bringing this scheme forward is relying on Homes England grant coming forward. So we do need to complete the building by March 26. So receiving planning approval as quickly as possible is now critical to secure the future of these homes coming forward. So in conclusion, we consider that this is a well-considered proposal addressing the dire need for affordable and social rented housing in the city. It's a sustainable building, delivering low cost energy bills for residents, and it's also of good quality. So we'd therefore be really grateful for members to support the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. There will be questions, but at this stage, could I invite Krista Jolly from the Housing Growth Team to come forward? Again, I anticipate there might be questions on that. Thank you, Krista. Can I invite members to put the question, please, in the usual way? Put your hand up should you want to ask a question. Kaylee, I can see you behind John, yes.
Thanks, Chair. I'd say, first of all, paragraph 8.3.9, it just says what the demand is for 1 and 2 beds lumped together. So I'd like to know what the demand is for 1 bed, 2 bed and 3 bed separately. And then also what's being done to ensure it's a child-friendly development, because many families are on the housing waiting list, and I can guarantee you that there will be children living in this. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that might be one for you, Krista, is it?
Yeah, it is. And I'm just looking at the data now, and I just need to check over with a colleague, see if I can get that data broken down, so I'll come back to that in a minute. I just wanted to pick up that point in terms of kind of that demand as well for families, and I just wanted to kind of highlight something that we've been looking at the stats and data for flats as opposed to houses, and one of the key things that's coming out of Housing Leeds data is that band A plus demand isn't there for 3-bed flats in the city. It's definitely there for 3-bed houses, but where we are seeing the demand come through for 3-bed flats, it's coming from band C bids rather than band A. So I just wanted to kind of make that point, but I will just go and check with a colleague in terms of that data and get that for you, Councillor Brooks.
Can I bring in Councillor Jones now, please?
Hi.
It's me, actually.
That's fine. Okay.
Can I just say I was surprised when Krista walked away. I expected her to stay. There may be more questions. So
She's coming back. She's gone to get some information.
Oh, is she? Okay.
Can I ask, when we're talking about affordable, what sort of rent you'd be expecting for these properties, and how would you define affordable, basically?
Yeah, so all the rents are below local housing allowance levels. So and they sort of sit well below market rent. So at the moment, so for example, a one bed for the social rent plus the service charge so the total cost would be £112 per week, as opposed to over £150 per week in the market rent. The local housing allowance cap for a one bed is £120. So we sit below market rent and LHA level. So they are genuinely affordable. And I think that's the work that will come out with Krista and the team, and through the nominations agreement, it's just being clear, agreeing with the council who these properties are let to.
So if you're on a minimum wage, according to my calculation, 25% of your wage will be £416 a month. So in actual fact, what you're saying is slightly higher than that. So it will be more than 25%. That's what I'm getting at.
It will be more than 25%, yeah, but below, yeah, it will be, but significantly below sort of local housing allowance levels.
Councillor Dye, please.
Thank you. Can I ask two questions, please? The first one, can you give some further detail on the security around the ground floor flats? What arrangements will be made for that? And then secondly, looking at the bike store, I think the bike store said it could accommodate 36 cycles, and we've got 78 homes. Is there any flexibility to do better than that in terms of encouraging active travel? Thank you.
Shall I just pick up security?
Yeah.
So if I could just pick up the security question. So the access to the main front doors for the ground floor apartments are from the main lobby area. So you have to go into the building to be able to access those apartments. There will be a CCTV and access controlled entrance into that lobby area, and there will also be a caretaker concierge there for the majority of the time as well. So it will be a heavily sort of managed and secured area. And for the very reason it's a city centre location, and we may have some more vulnerable tenants living within the building. Just in terms of the cycle parking, I think we've got. Do you want to take that one, Hannah?
Yeah, in terms of the cycle parking, we could up provisions. So we provided, as per the SPD, 30% Sheffield stands. If we were to swap them out for two tiers, we could drastically increase the cycle parking. If that was deemed more preferable to have more spaces than the Sheffield stands. And just to add to Annette's point, there's also a wall and railings around all sides of those ground floor apartments. So there would be no chance of security issues from outside either. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Yep, I was just going to pick up on the design, including a terrace. Is that right for the ground floor flats? So there would be security fencing between the perimeter of the site and that terrace that was usable by residents, was there?
I've not seen any more hands. Any more questions? Councillor Groom, please.
I'd just like to ask what proportion of the chargeable rent is the service charge? And my second question is around the design. I asked it on site this morning. You've produced a CGI, and quite often they can be misleading or not quite look like the real thing. Will we get an opportunity to see materials and have a better idea of what the built out design is going to look like? I appreciate that you've gone to some lengths to embellish the design and make sure that you feel it's in line with the standards expected. but I find it difficult from the CGI to get a sense. And my one worry about affordable housing developments is that they look more ordinary or more scaled down in appearance than ones that are more expensive.
Yeah, in terms of the design point, so all materials will obviously be conditioned, and the actual design of the shaped panels, so they're panels that are cast, and the idea of those was to reflect the cultural quarter in which the building sits. So they're supposed to be flowing, nice, flowing patterns, soft patterns. And that's something that will also be conditioned as well, and we can work with the design team we'll do full size samples panels to create that pattern, and we've also submitted pictures of a sample of the material, and it's like a stone effect material. And then the grey black brick is supposed to be to reflect the Northern Ballet, the cladding of the Northern Ballet, the dark cladding. And the Unite students as well. So it's supposed to tie in the buildings and the surroundings. Thank you.
Just on the service charge point, it represents about 20 to 25% of the total figure that I quoted earlier. And that might sound a bit high as a percentage. And obviously it's an estimate at the moment because we have more work to do. But it's because it's got that sort of caretaker person manning the ground floor, and it's quite a highly managed building.
Krista, are you coming back, please?
Yes, apologies. I now have the data in front of me. So the Leeds Housing Register demand data for Q1 2023-24 indicates that for Bermontoft Richmond Hill ward, the demand for 1 beds is 623, for 2 beds 291. For Little London Woodhouse, it's 589 for 1 beds and 262 for 2 beds. And for Hunslet Riverside, it's 586 and 182 for 2 beds.
Thank you, that's useful information. Did you want to come back, Hayley, on that? No?
I'll just have a bit of time to mull that over, thanks.
Come on, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, can somebody go through the connectivity for this site from other areas, such as I know Bermontoft Richmond Hill is the surrounding ward. How will people be able to access this site, please?
Just on that, Lewis, do you mind just bringing up the PowerPoint? Brilliant. I'll move across. Well, yeah, I was going to bring up the one with the landscape drawing, but I'll pick some of this up. Just this is the application site here. You've got connectivity through to the wider SOYO scheme. I think I mentioned in the presentation, it's a series of avenues and courtyards with buildings wrapping around. I think this block to the northeast is a bit different. That's coming forward as a student block, but you'll have access up here and across the bridge over York Road, and you've obviously got cut throughs here down to Leeds bus station. And we consider there's fairly good access as well under the viaduct to amenity space, Railway Street, to Railway Street and further on.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's really appreciated. And just the other one, while we were on the site visit this morning, because it needs to be a child-friendly block as well, and also it needs to be environment-friendly. The landscaping, there was no greenery on there. There were no trees, and there was no landscaping. Is there any plans for putting landscaping around the area, around the blocks?
Well, it's obviously quite a constrained site, but there is where we can plant along the boundary. There is a proposal to do so, but it's as much as we can do, essentially. I don't know if that you could show that on the site plan, John.
Yeah, Lewis, if you wouldn't mind bringing up the PowerPoint again. I'll get to that slide. See if I can move it across. It's the ground floor plan, Lewis. If I can, if you could just toggle through. Yep, that's the one. Yeah. So it would be this area, wouldn't it? I think where you're proposing some, it just says scrub planting on the northeast corner, where you've got a bit more space to introduce some landscaping.
There's also planting around the boundaries as well, so that gives the ground floor units protection
On the boundary treatments.
to look out on some green areas. We appreciate the green space issue, but on obviously with the constrained site and with the lay-by and the maintaining the footpath widths for highways requirements, we do have a little bit of planting around the wind baffle as well, just to soften the base of the wind baffle.
If I can add to that, Chair, I think that, John, the previous plan, that shows the site in the wider context. I suppose it's good to make the point that this is almost a piece in the jigsaw in the wider sort of Quarry Hill development, which obviously is now called Soyo, but obviously there's been a lot of public realm enhancements as part of that overall scheme, and obviously we're connecting into that through the resurface St Cecilia Street, which will then sort of feed you into the wider public realm within Soyo. And obviously there's sort of a hierarchy of spaces in Soyo that will serve a range of functions, including sort of the more intimate, tranquil spaces within some of the residential blocks. I mean, Soyo Block B to the north of us has got a residential courtyard that's got public access during the day, so that will provide a bit of a more tranquil environment. And then as you filter into Soyo, you've got the main east-west street, which is sort of the bustling, lively public realm area with it. It's got some functional hard landscape materials as well, which can be used as informal play space. And then you've got sort of Soyo Square between blocks A and B to the north. So there is accessibility to sort of public realm on your doorstep, although we're not delivering it directly on our site because of obviously it is quite a constrained plot.
Thank you for that. Councillor Blackburn, please.
I think. I thought we were having the same trouble not turning on. Picking up on what Councillor Khan was talking about, I mean, there seems to be plenty of green space in the overall area, but it doesn't seem a lot there for children. I know it's been mentioned there's a park, which I doubt if there's any facilities with, just over at bordering Berman's house. Councillor Khan just nodded to effect, and there's over by the railway there's some facilities there, but what facilities have we got for any children that might be in this development, and how far are they away?
Do you want to come in on that, John? If you can. There seems a hesitation, so.
Sure, I think it's a fair point that Councillor Blackburn raises. I mean, as shown in the image, you have got that play area at Railway Street, which is a 5-minute walk away. I mean, it's a city centre environment, so sometimes getting access to players is difficult. But there's some sort of more kind of seating areas within Quarry, the Quarry Hill site. That could perhaps double up as places for children to enjoy, and some of the courtyard space as well. Don't know if Daljit wants.
I think rightly or wrongly, we haven't got an approach where we're actually providing dedicated children's play areas, which are then separated out from more general public realm. The approach very much has been that we have informal play. And you see that throughout the city centre, where benches are not just designed as benches, but sometimes they're designed as pieces of art, and you've got sculpture and you've got, you go down Cookery Street and you've got areas grassed areas where you can play on. I often see children, play. But yes, it is very much, I think, reflective of the fact that in the city centre, the mix is slightly different. It is younger people. they tend to be less families, and those that do have families tend to have younger children. So we're not catering for teenagers with muggers and larger play areas. It's very much an informal play area, and there is some of those that context within the wider SOYO scheme. Whether that's enough or not is for members to take a view on. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Brooke.
Yeah, it's interesting that I asked the question, like what's been done to make this a more family friendly development, and Councillor Blackburn asked the same question but worded a different way. Thank you for that. I'm not convinced that any thought has been given at all to any families that are going to be living in this block, and how children all sort of feel being residents of this block. And I've not heard anything to reassure me that it'll be a comfortable and safe place for children to be in. Is the plan not to have families house here?
No, not at all. And what I should have sort of said, so internal to the building, it's a very secure building, so families should feel extremely safe here. All the apartments have been designed to be in accordance with nationally designed space standards, so they are slightly larger than you would normally get in the private market. And actually, there are about 30 of the 78 that are in excess of nationally described space standards. So I would say that they are generously sized, so they will feel more comfortable for families that do have children. So I think we have embraced having children in the building, so it'll be safe, it'll be secure. It's been designed with that in mind. In terms of amenities within the city centre, it's a very well located site, so there is good access to not only sort of local parks and local landscape areas, but also local amenities, local sports, etc. So we haven't, our feeling is that we've delivered a high quality designed scheme that should, whether you're a single person or whether you're a young family with a child or two children, you would be able to comfortably live here. I think the other point to note is just from a management perspective as well. We are going to be the long-term owners and managers of this building, and we have to work very closely with the housing team to work with the through the nominations process of tenants that are able to live here. So it's about getting that balance right. It's about ensuring that we are delivering homes that are most in need within the city.
Thank you. Councillor Dye, please.
Thank you. Just picking up on the discussion we've been having about play areas, that little wedgy section to the east that is labelled as planting, is that big enough to be turned into something that would be suitable for little children to play in? I can't really get a sense of how big it is.
Okay, yeah, I think can we, before I move on to comments, is there any questions to John? I know he's chipped in as we went along, but an opportunity if you want a question. If not, then can we move on to comments, please? Can I see a show of hands for questions?
I'll start us off, Chair, because everybody else seems very reluctant to say anything. I'm in a slightly difficult position here with this one, because the principle of the development, which would be to put a substantial number of affordable units, and we can argue about affordable, but they're actually much more affordable than a lot of the stuff we pass, into the city centre, is a very positive thing and something that I think we'd all support. And I have no doubt, no concerns about the company who are going to run this. I think they have a track record, etc. And I suppose we're asked, in effect, questions about the design. Well, I suppose as we ask Steve, he'd basically say it is what it is, isn't it? It's a block of flats. And it's been tweaked. I suppose if I was tweaking it, I'd tweak it a bit more, but I'm not sure that we can ask for anything else in relation to that. If you talk about the housing mix, in the past, we've talked quite a lot about the proportion of 3-bedroom dwellings. But it seems to me from the figures we've been given that there is pressure for the 1 and the 2-bedroom units and less pressure for the 3. In a perfect world with a lot of capacity, we might ask for more. But I think from my point of view, the housing mix seems acceptable. I think the problem really is that to get the affordability, we're squeezing a lot onto the site, in my opinion. And that means that some of the things that we'd normally expect around softening the landscape with planting or even just a sit-out area doesn't seem to be here. And it strikes me that we can say, oh, well, tough, or we can stick out. And as you know, I'm constantly going on about the green space within the city centre. So if you did ask me a question, I do think because of the size and the mass of this building, it is a bit close to the neighbouring developments. I think that the absence of any planting other than the notional little bit in the corner, which in the best will of the world you couldn't use for anything else, is a minus. And I think we had a brief discussion on site this morning, didn't we, in relation to how you might achieve some extra planting. And the more I think about it, and I had a bit more of a stroll around the area on my way back, and I was thinking about, let me just check the correct name, St. Peter's Place, which is just down the road from there. And if you look at it at the moment, it's got 2 or else 3 big trees in it, which are fine, and a large area of broken paving. And it seems to me that there is capacity at that location for, and I hope Dalsha will forgive me there, a bit of a pocket park. It is wasted space at the moment, and I have a suspicion it's city council space, and I don't see any reason why we shouldn't actually ask developers to help with lifting that particular piece of land, which we passed on several occasions, up from what it is now, which is unusable, really, to something that you could, I come back to it every time, don't you? On a warm day like today, if the sun was shining and you lived in these flats, where would you go and sit out? Well, you could sit on the main concourse. That's true, but it's a walk. And with the best will in the world, walking to the parks you've told us, I think is not really practical, if I'm honest. And if I'm also honest, once you get there, it's not that good. So I think that there has to be some planting with this. There has to be something that helps break up that and get some greenery into that part of the city centre. And we know the reasons for putting trees in, and we know the reasons for putting grass in, and I don't need to repeat them. I think that probably covers my view on that, because, as I say, the principle is fine. I think it's some detailed work that still needs to be done around the element of amenity space.
Thank you for that contribution, Colin. A walk back to the Civic was well spent. David Blackburn.
Thank you, Chair. I sort of share Colin's comments there, really, on much of that. I mean, unfortunately, this space is not very large, so there's not a lot you can do with it. And I suspect if you tried to reduce it, all that would happen is you make it unviable. And certainly we need that housing in city centre. But I think we, in the long run, if we don't look at this seriously, and I mean not just this application, but on a broader front, we're gonna make trouble for ourselves in future, because we've got to have somewhere for youngsters to play. And you can't fit it in on this site, I agree, but there's got to be something there, and we've got to find some way of doing that. I'm not good as far as saying I'd vote down this application on that basis, because I wouldn't know. But the fact is, it's got to come, and it's probably council's got to do something about it.
Councillor Groom, please.
I just want to come back to the affordability argument, if I may, because thank you, Krista. I totally accept the statistics that you've given us, but I just wonder, we're putting 78 affordable units in the city centre, which is 78 more affordable units than we currently have in a city that isn't big enough to put the number of affordable units that we need until we start identifying more space. So it seems to me that to not put the required amount of 3 beds in is a lack of foresight. I think we've said before that we tend to think of families with 2 or 3 children will want a house. But given the space we've got and the nature of the building we're doing, I think that concept has to change. And I have referred before to places in Europe where most families live in a flat. And I just think we have to change expectations and build flats according to families' needs rather than just single people's needs. So I personally feel it's a shame that we haven't put more 3 beds in this block. Personally, I think we need to think through a strategy for the city centre and for living in a different kind of way. I think that's probably the extent of my point, except to say that I would agree with comments that have been made about green space, because one of the things you need as a family is some green space and somewhere to get some fresh air. I don't think you can can people up in boxes without any access to nature at all. And I do think we need to make the very most of that plot and get as much on it as we can.
Thank you, Councillor Groom. Councillor Khan, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I also, well, by the way, I do welcome the affordable developments in the city of Leeds. But however, I just want to echo the comments being made by my colleagues previously is, you know, if we need to be child friendly and if it needs to be environment friendly, we do need to make sure reflect that as well at the same time. And as you know, Beaumont Richmond Hill have over 39 multi-story blocks in that ward. And I know exactly how the families will be feeling to live in this block as well. And the good thing about the other blocks in Beaumont Richmond Hill, they do have balconies. I know that's another way people can just sit outside on balconies, but however, you don't have that provision as well. And I think it's also, you know, I am a bit annoyed actually when we signpost them to other pocket parks around surrounding areas when the facilities are not there. And also there's a massive development going to be taking place on those parks, not going to be serving those people as well. There's going to be over 2,000 apartments going to be built around there. So I can't see those small parks will have the capacity to serve those residents and on top of these residents as well. So I think, yes, I do welcome the development of affordable apartments in Leeds. That will ease the pressure on Leeds City Council waiting list. But however, there are some concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillor Brooke, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm also obviously in support of a 100% affordable block, socially rented as well. I also know that the funding from Homes England is incredibly difficult to come by, and developments like this don't come along very often. So I suppose like, you know, if it's the best that we can do with the funding that's available, I understand that, but I also believe that people on lower incomes deserve better than not having access to green spaces, and children should have access to a little bit of a playground nearby. Thank you.
You, Councillor Jones, please.
I'm concerned, to be honest, is that you're saying this will be all smaller children. Well, smaller children get bigger, and the lack of space that they will have. There's also an effect on people's health. If you don't have green space, the effect of a lack that they will end up with, possibly with a lack of vitamin D. I think that's quite important to understand, that people need green space to get out. If there's no green space available, people will tend to spend more time in their own confines of their own home. So I'm deeply concerned that there's no address on more green space, because that's quite clear what's needed. But also the effect as these children grow up, if they don't move, which is possibly the only solution that they'd have, is that they will be confined to a very limited space. And as kids get older, idle hands can make mischief.
Councillor Jones, any further comments? If not, then can we move on to page 26, where there are a number of questions for members to address in 9.1. Starting with number 1, do members consider the proposal housing mix acceptable? I think that might have been a general yes as the conversation went. Is that right? Yep. Do members consider the proposed design of the development acceptable? And again, I think that might be a yes. Yep. They've got Juliet balconies on them. Sorry, is that a yes, or is there some comment? Kate, yes, please. We need to be clear for members for develop.
Well, try again. Well, we've talked a lot about alternative green space. You know, can we put that in as a request for where Councillor Campbell suggested? To me, seems like a sensible idea.
Chair, I was going to bring that up actually. I think the design of the building is one element, and the what we've been talking about in relation to amenity space, let's be brutally honest, is slightly different. So I am conscious of the fact that if you don't use the entirety of that site, even though I have some questions about the distances, you don't get this number of dwellings on. Unless you make it substantially, the base substantially smaller and the building substantially taller, which might be an alternative, I don't know. So I think my view on the design is it does what it says it's supposed to do, and you know, that's it. I think, as I say, I think when we get to the end of the questions, I might like to make some suggestions around how we deal with this issue of green space that we've spoken about.
So we accept 2 then, do we? The proposed design and of the development. Yep. 3, do members consider the separation distance to the Northern Ballet Centre and Solyo apartment block B acceptable? Colin?
In here, I think it is very tight, in my opinion, very tight. And can you get the slides back up when you were showing us the examples across the city? And in particular, is it Mustard Wharf? Yeah. Wherever that is. Yeah, there we are. Now, when I was shown that on site today, I accept that Belgrave Street and Mustard Wharf, the buildings are close together. But the big difference is on Mustard Wharf, you've got those trees down the middle. And that's the thing that pushes them apart, in my opinion. And so do I think the distances currently are acceptable? I have to say, let me just check what I don't believe they are to the Soyo site. I think the building is too close, unless, and that's part of the issue about where the entrances are to these things. We can get something in there to make that space look larger. And it's all about perception. To the Northern Valley, they've expressed some concerns, which I think I would agree with, actually. And it's about saying, I know they've got their car park access road, which is effectively the separation, but I'm still not 100% certain that that's, in my opinion, whether the space there, which is just the access road to the car park, is a suitable space.
Thanks, Colin. I'll bring you in, Councillor Graham. Yeah, it does meet our policy, and we have seen examples the same. So, I mean, that's the issue, I guess.
Well, the more I've listened to the debate, I actually, my initial reaction to that question was, in the context it's in, yes, the spacing is okay. It's, as you've rightly said, Colin, it's not about the actual measured space. It's about the perception you get when you look at it and how you feel. And I think our issue here is about green space and recreational space. I don't think it's about actual space. I think it's about how we use the space. That would be my view.
If we can get back to the question then, and I do appreciate that members will have different opinions. Do members consider the separation distance to the Northern Ballet Centre and the Soyo apartment block B acceptable? Is that a general yes? Yes. Okay, that's
I think you're going to need to put me down as no on that one.
Okay, I'm sure it'll be recorded by Andy. Going on to 4, do members consider the ground floor flats acceptable in terms of overlook and residential amenity? Is it? I think we might have been reassured on that one by officers.
I'm sorry about this, but I still have reservations about that. I understand what the drawings say, and I understand what we were told on site. But when you are standing there looking at what they will be looking at, which is the top of the cars in the car park for Northern Valley, and then that area of somewhat dubious scrub behind it. I just have, I think you raised the point, didn't you, about effectively the space, the secure space. And I'd like, if they come back and they keep those in, I'd like some much more detail in relation to how you secure the space in front of what will be the window and a door to those flats. I don't think there's any dispute about the concierge and how you get into the main block. It will be hopefully quite difficult if you're providing you're not a tenant. But that, because it's out of the way, it's round the back. It's not really overlooked in. And so I think from my point of view, I would hope that they could come back with something that would reassure me in relation to security.
Thanks, Colin. We haven't got to that question. That's the next one, but I'm sure if it does come back, that it's been recorded and we will get more detail. So I guess that's where, how do we feel about 4? Do we accept that as is written, or do we take that as a proviso? Okay, well, let's see what we do on the next question first, shall we? Moving on then, do members consider the application can be determined under delegated powers subject to any conditions they may wish to apply? And that's the important one here, I think. What do members think? Can we agree that it could be done under delegated powers or not?
Chair, can I suggest that there's some concerns about the design and the material, and I think it should come back to the panel, for further into. And I think it'll be good actually, because I mean it's affordable housing and development, and normally what tends to happen is we tend to use less quality material. So I think it'll be really useful for us to bring the samples of the material as well, Chair.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we had an issue about resign. It was the key issues were green space, wasn't it? Yeah. Councillor Groom, please.
Sorry, I was just going to chip in and say, having done that little summary that you've just done, actually green space is the thing that we want to see mostly when it comes back.
Just one thing, can we have it back quickly as well? Because I won't want us to lose the money that we're getting for this. So let's get it back quickly so we can get it sorted.
Thank you, Chair. I think it'd be remiss of me if I didn't actually make some comments on the green space issue. I've listened very carefully to debate, and it's quite clear to me that because it's a constrained site, members are accepting of the quantum of development within this context in terms of gaps to buildings, in terms of the relationship to surrounding uses. But the main concern is that in members' view, there's a lack of outdoor space, there's a lack of greenery and space. And I note the suggestion from Councillor Campbell about improving nearby areas to provide that. I must be very honest that that's not going to be something that's going to be delivered on the back of this development. The scheme's too small, and the objective here is to use the funding we have for affordable housing to maximise affordable housing delivery, for which there's a clear need. There are strategic moves which members are aware of. There's our spaces strategy. There's been the move for a city centre park, which is yes, it takes longer than we would like to deliver, but it's the first phase is being delivered. And remember, we're planning for the long term, and these spaces are coming along. They're not, and by no means we haven't finished that sort of treatment of spaces between buildings, going from traditionally what has been highway dominated space to much friendlier, greener public realm spaces. So good examples I can think of is Cookery Street, for example. Now, we have made the point in the report and today that there is that sort of greening taking place on the immediate doorstep in terms of the SOYO scheme. There may be avenues wider, more strategically, which we can look at, but we can't tie it to this development. So I just wanted, if the exam question, as it were, that members send us away with is we want some green space, then there's some real constraints around that, and I just want to make that clear. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I suppose, Dalji, I understand, because I appreciate, Dalji, that your function is to sit on our shoulders and whisper in our ears about what you think we should be doing and policy. But I think if I'm allowed to be the devil sitting on your other shoulder, we have just had in July the warmest month on record in the entire world. We cannot continue to say we can't do these things. The mean temperature in that area of the city is in excess of what the mean temperature for Leeds is. The way to lower that temperature is to plant some trees. Green space is no longer an add-on. It's an integral part of that. And it's not just an integral part because we're trying to protect the world, which we are, but it's an integral part because we're trying to protect those people who will live there. And living in a block which does not have easy access to a bit of greenery, whether it's, even if it's as big as this table, is not acceptable, in my opinion. and I know I've said this on more than one occasion, and I will continue to say it, that there is a possibility, there are possibilities within this area for a contribution from the developer to green up some spaces. I mean, we did it when we were standing there. Caroline will back me up for this. We were standing there looking at the block on the opposite side of the road from there, where they planted 2 trees, and we were saying they're a bit big, but they managed to get 2 trees onto their site. And I'm looking at this, and you've got a lay-by on the front of it, and I said on site, what does this road? What's it called? The print's too small. I can't read the name of the road. What's its function? And so I would say, do we actually need a lay-by? Sorry, Gillian, do we actually need a lay-by? Couldn't you put trees in the lay-by and let people struggle? Because actually, the amount of traffic using that particular road is relatively small. I do not believe there is not a way to do this. I just don't believe it. If we say, yes, that's what we want, then with the best will in the world, these people will go away and look at it and say, well, maybe we could do this, or maybe we could do that. But if we don't ask, we're never going to get. And if we don't ask and we don't get, then the consequences further down the line don't really bear thinking about. I'll get off my hobby horse now.
It might be a question for you, Jill. What the lay-by? Is it possible it could be smaller and we could get a couple of trees in? Or I don't actually know the measurements of it, so I don't know.
Thank you, Chair. I think with the development being car free, you know, clearly the discussion has been around how how and where deliveries will take place, whether that's refuse vehicles, whether it's just general deliveries, post, food, whatever it may be. And that's the reason the lay-by was put in. In terms of the actual road itself, it's actually only adopted to this site. So at the moment, the road that goes beyond this site is not part of the adopted highway. And it isn't a through road. So there is limited traffic on it. But I think as we saw on site today, it is a narrow road. It's just that issue of usability, really. So, I mean, we can certainly look at whether there's the ability to get a tree within the lay-by area. It's not very long, though. The frontage isn't very long as it stands. But we can certainly have a look at it. If you wanted it removing, I mean, we could do it, but I just think it would cause certain difficulties for the people who occupied the site.
For Gillian, it'd be nice to have more detail, but obviously there's a possibility there. The other thing that we've lost sight of in our deliberation is that Councillor Dye did question the amount of cycle spaces, and it was conceded from the back that we could get a lot more in there. And I'd like that to be captured, John, please. Please.
If I could just come back on that one. In terms of the cycle position, so it doesn't meet our standards, but again, it's an issue of the size of the site and the compromise is being made here. I think the issue of the Sheffield stands really allows us to put adaptive cycles in the cycle storage. So I wouldn't want to lose the ability to make that cycle storage accessible to people. So I think, this issue of getting more in is, yes, it might be more, but it'd be more for able-bodied people. So I think there's a balance that we need to strike in terms of the detail of the cycle storage.
Consideration. And the last thing we want to do is bicycles going up in the lifts into people's flats, and that does happen. It happens now. Councillor Brooks.
Yeah, I think something that people haven't considered around the fact that it's a car-free development. A lot of people on lower incomes do go to work as delivery drivers as a way to supplement their incomes. So not having enough cycle storage for everyone that's in there can really, really impact on the possibility of people improving the economic sort of I don't know, what's the word? yeah, like making yourself a bit more sort of secure economically. So like I really think that that's been overlooked with the development as well, because so many people do drive for delivery and taxi driving and other things like that. But there's also quite a lot of delivery riders as well. And especially being in the city centre, there's a lot of opportunities for that kind of work. So it in my opinion, that really does need sorting out, because otherwise people will have another opportunity close to them if they can't have anywhere to store a bike.
For that, we've had a really good discussion on this. So if I can go back to 5 again, I don't think we come to resolution on it, but it's the clear messages: we need more bicycle spaces and we need as much green space as we possibly can get. Anything else members feel? Whatever we do, we have to send officers away with a steer and developers away with a steer. If we were to agree that, do you think then we could allow it to be determined by delegated power? Bear in mind, it's 100% affordable. It's much needed in this part of the city. We've had the figures from Krista on that one, and it's waiting to happen. And there was an issue about starting as quickly as possible because the funding may run out from 2026. So with that in mind, can members agree that? It's straightforward yes or no, and I will ask you all individually or a show of hands. Yes? Colin, please,
with the best
a short one this time, not a long.
Well, with the best will in the world, we can do this on the 7th of September.
Yeah. Okay, Colin, that's your opinion. So, all right, let's have a show of hands. Can we delegate it to the Chief Planning Officer? All those in favour, please show. Okay, for Andy's sake, those against? Okay, that's clearly carried. Thank you for that. It's been a long debate, but it's been well worth having. And thanks to John for bringing such an excellent report to us, and the developers, Nita and team, for explaining it pretty well. Thank you. Okay, shall we have a 10-minute break now? I think that's not a bad idea. I could do with some water. You welcome back. And that was really an interesting debate. I think we probably got there in the end. I think we have sent the applicants away with clear messages, what we'd like to see on the site. And thank you for your contributions. Can we move on now to Latitude Yellow, land at the former Doncaster Monkbridge Works, Whitehall Road, Leeds. And can I at this stage invite Andrew to present this report to us? Or say a few words you want to say. I always like to do that with offers and then we move on to the applicants.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got nothing to add, so if they want to pass it over to the applicants to do the presentation.
That's absolutely fine. But as I say, if there's anything you want to draw attention to. Okay, can I welcome the applicants? And as you know, it's a pre-app and you have up to 10 minutes to make your presentation, and the members will ask you questions and comments as they feel appropriate. So please begin when you're ready.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks everyone else for taking the time to see us today. My name's Paul Holland and I'm the Operations Director for BAM Properties, responsible for the delivery of this project. Yeah, go for it. Yeah. That's the top one now. Yeah. So BAM Properties are part of the wider BAM group. We have somewhere in the region of 6,500 people in the UK, and we've been active in the UK and specifically Leeds for around 150 years. For BAM Properties, we've most recently been active on the Latitude Master Plan site, and I believe you visited there today, so you'll see that the scheme in question is the last piece of the puzzle for the Latitude Master Plan. So you'll also be aware from your discussion today, I'm sure, that we have an implemented scheme in place, but we are looking to revisit that purely because the scheme no longer meets BAM's aspirations for our sustainability targets. We're also aware that Leeds City Council have declared a climate emergency, which aligns with the group, BAM Group's aspirations to deliver the highest possible sustainability led product. And what we're looking to do is discuss with you today the scheme that we believe meets that new requirement. We are looking for this project to be either the most sustainable or one of the most sustainable office buildings in Leeds. And we're looking to do that through setting market leading targets. We're reducing not only the operational energy that most people are targeting now, but we are specifically looking at reducing embodied and whole life carbon, and we've done that through specific measures like omitting the basement that was in the original scheme. We have very carefully considered where the core for the building sits to reduce the thickness of the concrete floor slab. We've reduced the number of lifts so that we don't have as much operational and embodied carbon in the scheme, as an example. We are looking for the scheme to be net zero in operation, and we're looking for it to be very biodiversity friendly. And we're looking to achieve that through both the delivery of the garden to the western side of the building, but also through the roof terrace area and the green walls. We're looking to promote sustainable travel through the new cycleway in front of the building, but also through the delivery of the 158 cycle spaces and the numerous lockers and spa level changing facilities that we'll introduce. Again, along that health and wellness theme, we're looking to have a gym and fitness studio and event space in the building to promote health and wellbeing for the users. We're also looking to have a ground floor cafe and seating area for the occupants and the general public. We are actually looking for that cafe to be operated by a local social value operator initiative. We've had some early discussions with the planning team and local councillors, and we'll be very much looking to select a local partner to operate that, with us delivering the facility and the social value operator then running that to benefit their initiative. We'll have a communal roof garden to encourage use of outdoor spaces, green walls, as I've mentioned, and very ambitious social value targets, and not only through the legacy social value cafe that we're looking to introduce, but we'll be looking to have at least a minimum of 25% of our construction cost allocated to social value initiatives in the local area. On the right of this slide, I won't labour on it, but what you can see is some of our most recent office developments that we've completed as the BAM Properties team. The two top ones being most recently completed in Scotland, and both BCO award winning projects. Next slide. This slide here really is just to demonstrate the I suppose, importance and emphasis of BAM's sustainability strategy. The inner wheel of that coloured circle you can see there is the BAM construction sustainability strategy wheel, and that tells us how they plan to tackle sustainability from a construction perspective. But that outer wheel, we've worked with both our construction teams and external consultants to make sure that what we do is we align with the group's targets, but we also align with the market's targets in terms of funders, tenants, and basically looking to see what not what the world needs now, but what the world's going to need in 3 years' time when we actually look to complete the scheme and have it delivered. Again, you can see there we're looking to future-proof with high biodiversity targets, net zero in operation. We're building for climate resilience. We have a climate risk register in place already, where we're addressing overheating, flooding, all the things that we're seeing now as a trend, not only in Leeds but across the UK. And we're designing our building now to deal with those issues in the future. And as I said, focus on 25% minimum allocated to social value and local economic value initiatives. In terms of the site location, I believe you visited today. You can see the site there in yellow, which comes as no surprise. And really, as I said, that is the last piece of the puzzle for us as a developer for this master plan. We delivered Latitude Red some years ago. You can see the residential buildings that are well advanced on site now, and obviously you've got the residential scheme and the viaduct behind that's well developed as well. So we feel very much that the site is now crying out for this scheme to be brought forward. And as I've said, we don't want to deliver the old scheme that didn't meet the sustainability objectives that we have. So we would like to revisit that with a scheme that very much meets a similar massing, size, area, but does all the things that we now believe a new Grade A plus sustainable office should do. In terms of the site history, I won't labour on this, I'm sure you all know, but obviously it's the old Monkbridge Steelworks. I think the only thing I would say here is that obviously over and above the extensive surveys we've done to make sure that the site is actually deliverable, we have designed the building in such a way that we try and nod back to the existing site use in terms of the aesthetics, and my colleague David will touch on that when we get to that point. In terms of the site context analysis, you were there today, so you can see that. What we're just doing here is showing you, the site along Whitehall Road from the east, the residential towers that are coming up, and the vacant site that we have and are looking to develop next. In terms of connectivity, as part of the master plan, connectivity has always been really, really important to us, and we know it has to the council as well. You'll know that we've delivered that connectivity on the rest of the site thus far, and the only piece really left to deliver is from Whitehall Road through to the residential scheme at the back, and you'll see that red line that cuts through the Latitude Yellow site. That's the new path that will be delivered through our landscape biodiversity friendly garden, and you'll see what that looks like as we move through. This slide here again is just to show you how the Latitude Yellow site sits within the overall master plan. Latitude Red, obviously, as you know, is developed. Purple A and Purple B are largely out the ground and well developed now, and the Monkbridge site at the back is well developed and largely complete as well. So in terms of the heights of the buildings, what this slide demonstrates is that you've got residential towers up to 31 stories behind us, and then a mix of 14, 8, 10, all around. What we're looking to deliver here is an office building that is ground plus 11 stories. We previously had an implemented consent for ground plus 9. The building itself, though, in terms of an area perspective, is actually slightly smaller because we're giving so much space away to amenity. And by amenity, we mean the cafe, we mean the shower and changing facilities, the gym, the roof terrace, all of the spaces that we now believe a modern office building requires. So slightly higher to accommodate that, but actually in terms of net internal area, the building's smaller. So we're giving a lot more, but actually making less money for it, if that makes sense. And in terms of planning context, this really just lets you see how that the height of our new building sits within that context. So, you know, it doesn't sit towering above anything, it doesn't sit towering or sitting way below anything. It sits very much nicely in the context of the site, and we feel will complement what's come and what is about to come quite well once that area is complete. This here really just lets you see what the existing scheme looked like. So what you see here is a big glass box. You don't see, or you will not see, big glass boxes generally being brought forward by developers anymore, purely because the glass generates overheating in the buildings, which means that you need more operational energy to cool them. It doesn't work anymore. So the scheme that my colleague David's going to talk you through, from an aesthetic perspective, you'll see a lot more solidity to the facade, and that's really just to manage that overheating issue that that we also desperately want to now be mindful of and manage to allow us to get the net zero in operation, but also our neighbours accreditation. Last slide for me is just to touch on the public consultation. We've had extensive public consultation and pre-app discussions with the planning team so far. So we've spoken with Leeds City Council planning team, the Civic Trust, local councillors, and we've also leaflet dropped 2,000 neighbours to let them know. The feedback that we've had from everyone has largely been very positive. So we have no concerns about how the stakeholders were engaged thus far feel about the scheme. We hope you feel the same, but David will talk you through that. And
Good afternoon, my name is David Shaw. I'm a project architect and project director at Cooper Cromer. I'm conscious that we've maybe overrun our 10 minutes, so I'll make this as succinct as possible. Okay, so the approach to the development draws inspiration and reference from the existing site. It is rich in industrial forms and material, the masonry firing hearths, the cart tracks creating routes to, from and across the site, and the hexagonal iron ingots. Next slide, please. The latitude plot is approximately 35 metres wide by 55 metres long, with the western side following the edge of the Leeds Bradford railway line. Orientated on a north-south aspect, the site benefits from the sun on the eastern and the southern facades. Next slide, please. The positioning of the building offers appropriate offsets from the neighbouring developments, either built or unbuilt. On the southern edge, over 17 metres between our building line and the Get Living scheme to the south. On the north edge, almost 16 metres between us and the Purple Bee development. On the eastern and western edges, over 20 metres to the railway line and the Yorkshire Post building. Our strategic approach to the site, pulling back the building from the railway line, is to green the edges, providing the shared space on the western edge between the building and the elevated railway line with a mixture of hard and soft landscaping. The hexagonal ingot forms are subtly replicated in the planted landscaping. Next slide. These images demonstrate the materiality and the density of greenery we're proposing. As precedents, these in-between spaces are fully considered as part of our wider site strategy. It will be a high-quality external environment, green and lush, but contributing positively to the overall development. Next slide, please. These visuals demonstrate a level of density in the planting and the greenery. The routes, much like the historic cart tracks, are carved through our site. Next slide, please. A fully level and accessible for all place to stop, wait, sit and socialise. Next slide, please. The main building entrance is located off Whitehall Road in the southeastern side of the building. Visitors travelling on cycles arrive off the cycle route and into the ground floor cycle store on the west. Pedestrian access is also provided to the eastern edge into the shared public cafe. The western edge affords covered access for 160 cyclists, pedestrians and drivers. Limited parking, goods, refuse and service delivery are made from the rear Whitehall via the loading bays and the shared access road. The ground floor is set back on the north and the south edges in a two-storey colonnade. The ground floor footprint represents only 30% of the overall site area at ground floor level, and over 40% of that space is dedicated wholly to shared building amenity. Limited ground floor parking, 10 cars and 6 motorcycle spaces is provided in the Undercroft in lieu of an underground basement car park removed from the consented scheme, all promoting active travel. The ground floor co-working space and cafe are located on the most public and active side of the site. Along the south elevation, the remainder of the cafe and working space, the main entrance to the building and the bike store, each of these spaces creating activity and interest along the primary building edges. Next slide, please. The first floor offers over 25% of its net area to further building amenity, a gym, fitness suite, changing areas, 190 lockers, 14 showers, all facilities for cyclists, runners and active travellers. These figures are vastly improved from the currently consented scheme. A single eastern edge office space is intended for future subdivision and use by startups and smaller first generation businesses and co-working. Again, active use on this edge. Next slide, please. The upper floor levels are dedicated almost entirely to Grade A commercial office space, circulation core and associated provision support. The roof level plan offers, though, once again, further shared building amenity in the multi-use space, the flexible breakout and the external roof terrace, which offers fantastic views at height back east across Wellington Place and towards the city centre. Green walls and biophilia are spread across the building at the main entrance, in the entrance lobby and on the roof terrace, softening these spaces and adding texture to the building. Next slide, please. Level access and tailored external furniture will ensure a special space in the city for building tenants and their visitors. Tall glazed balustrades will permit views out, but will also provide a degree of protection from the elements. Next slide, please. The building is arranged over 13 stories, approximately 50 metres in height. The ground floor and first floor, as we've seen, almost entirely given over to shared amenity. The omission of the basement has displaced the building's plant over the ground floor and the roof levels. 10 levels of Grade A commercial office space and a single level of flexible multi-use space. Screened plant zones are located cleverly on the north side of the building, away from Whitehall Road. The building's height draws from the context of its neighbouring properties. The approved Get Living scheme buildings directly south are 18 stories, with their neighbouring buildings reducing to 9 stories. This is in keeping with the scale of the Yorkshire Post building and then our building at 13 stories. The building to the north, Purple B, rises again to 17 and 18 stories, and on the southwest, Springwells Garden building is 16 stories. Next slide, please. The building considers its immediate neighbours, constructed pending consent or determined. Our building seeks to complement the rich and diverse mix of architecture in the immediate environment. Next slide, please. The wider context of the central commercial district also offers points of interest and reference. Next slide, please. Sorry, back one, Paul. One again. Thank you. The new building recognises the history of the former steelworks site, the hard industry and manufacturing of metals and castings captured in our approach to materiality. The new building utilises modern building systems, arranging elevations with dark brickwork and bronze-coloured metal cladding, a contemporary mix of brick material more aligned with the tonal quality of the Yorkshire Post building adjacent. Next slide, please. A weighted, regular and rhythmic lower building plinth and frame articulates the ground and first floor setbacks, creating a more civic approach to the street. Next slide. A simple and elegant upper elevational response is delivered with thin horizontal banding, strong vertical dark masonry elements and lightweight metal infills with an articulated crown detail. Set to a rhythm across the facade, these repeat on a brick glass metal brick pattern with a full brick deep reveal. Next slide, please. The southwestern corner incorporates metal perforated panels integrated into the overall composition of the building, assisting with wind mitigation.
Can I just stop you? You're well over your 12 minutes. I don't wish to inhibit what you want to say, but perhaps a lot will be teased out with questions from members. Because could we bring it to a conclusion, please, and we can go into questions and comments?
And maybe back one. Thank you. Architecturally, our building completes the master plan development with an exemplary confidence. Considered and progressive, it is a worthy full stop to the redevelopment of the former Monksbridge site in Leeds. Thank you.
And thank you. Thanks, Paul and David. I'm sure there'll be lots and lots of questions and it'll tease out some of the issues perhaps you would have liked to bring to our attention. Can I invite members to ask questions? Councillor Gruen, please.
Two questions, and one was about a slide that you didn't have the opportunity to talk to. So could we just go back until I recognise it again? It's the few you skipped over at the end. No. Yes, there. Where's, I don't recognise where that correlates with the plan.
That's the new roof terrace proposed.
Oh, the
So
roof
at the
terrace.
top of the roof, what you can see there is the two green walls that we're looking to introduce with planting, and that looks back towards the city.
Right. Okay, I get that. And then towards the beginning, where you were showing the plan of the site and the cycle and pedestrian ways through, could you just flick back to that? But no, it wasn't that one. Wasn't that one either. It was the one we looked at on site this morning.
I think it's the ground floor.
That's the one. Yes, that's the one. So I couldn't quite work out how a pedestrian gets from the southernmost border of that plot of land to the northernmost. So I can see a red arrow and I can also a red line. I can also see blue lines. So would the pedestrians walk along the cycleway until they reach the red line? How does that work?
So what you're seeing on the left hand side of that drawing there, the pink and the blue are essentially hard landscaping. So they are a route, but they are not the dedicated cycle route. This dedicated cycle route runs across the front of the building. That's the sort of light blue dashed line. So what we're seeing there is that there are a couple of options for someone arriving by cycle to get into what is the cycle store in the bottom corner. However, they could still take that left hand side route up and through and onto the pink line and up north onto Whitehall if they're coming through the garden space. If they're not coming through the garden space and they're coming from the eastern side of the site, then they're more likely to come up the west side of the east side of the landscaping. It's shared space, so either or will share the same landscaping into and around the building.
Maybe worth also pointing out that from the front of the building, you can actually walk to that area as well. So you can come from left or right and get into that garden area and pick up the pathway through there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Councillor Khan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow on from Councillor Gruen's question, if you can go back to the same slide we were just seeing earlier on. Yeah, you know the cycleway we're going to be developing in front of the building, and then there's going to be a footpath. There's going to be some tree planting as well. In your opinion, is that enough space for planting and for footpath as well?
I'll come in here. Simon Tilby, landscape architect from Layer. We've done a fair amount of work on ensuring that tree planting in front of the building would work. We've got a 5 metre offset from the building. We've got incoming gas mains, electricity in the pavement. We've got the cycleway as well and the bus stop. So we've done an overlay and we've sent some information to the landscape officer at Leeds, and the feedback is we'll look at tree planting that is in a cell, a trench, so it promotes the longevity of the tree. But also down to the species. So we're not looking at big parkland trees. We know we can't have that. It will grow like here into the glazing. So we're looking at very fastigiate forms. And the feedback from Leeds was, can we squeeze more together? So we've got more canopy along that length, and we've got, I think it's 9 trees there, all sat within a trench, all will grow successfully. Right place, right planet.
Come back, Chair. A question for Gillian, actually, highways officer. Gillian, you know, there's going to be development opposite from this development. How will the carriage look after both developments going to be finished? Will there be any changes on the carriageway?
So I think this is all a little piecemeal at the moment. We did have the plan for the site to the south, so we got some widening of the highway to give us cycle provision. The two-way cycleway now shown on this plan is an aspiration of a wider council scheme, which might give us a bit of space back to the south of Whitehall Road to do whatever we need with. That's assuming that development comes forward as planned. At the moment, the cycle scheme that the council's highways team is looking to deliver is not quite the same as the one you're seeing on the screen, and wouldn't necessarily accommodate the trees that are shown either. So I think there's a bit more work needs to be done to bring all of those elements together. But in terms of the question about what will it look like, we're seeking a single lane carriageway in each direction, a two-way cycle track to the north, widened footways both sides, and then there is the bus lay-by as well, which requires a cycle bypass track. So that's generally what we expect to see at the end of this. There are also complicating issues surrounding temporary wind mitigation for the site to the south that we need to work through when we get to that point. So it's a bit of a work in progress. So I can't say at the moment that we're fully supportive of what's shown on the screen, but the principles are there.
Thank you, Chair. I think it'll be really helpful in future if we can have some, design so you can indicate the master plan for the carriageway, because this morning the carriageway was a busy road, and I think the footpath and the cycleway, I know you have assured us the tree's going to be making sure they grow above the way outside here. But in my opinion, if you've got a pushchair, if you've got a two-way people coming, it'll be difficult for people to cross. So I think that needs to be considered. And finally, what relationship do you have with the rail network? Because the bridge is just side of your development, and it just needs a lick of paint as well, actually. So definitely will bring the air.
I suppose two things. One is we're very much looking to work with Leeds City Council to meet the aspirations of the cycleway or the shared space, whatever that ends up in that full strategy is. We're working to accommodate that as much as we can, and when the final scheme becomes clear, we'll look to try and work with them to implement that as far as physically possible, I suppose I could say there. In terms of our relationship with Network Rail, we've made contact with them to start that engagement. They are actually one of BAM's biggest clients, so we're hoping that we get a reasonable audience with them to have a discussion about that. Whether that leads to us touching any of their asset, we don't yet know. We're very early in the dialogue, but we'll keep that in mind and we'll mention that.
Thank you for that. And just on the green spaces, as you know, we spoke quite a bit on green spaces at the previous application, where the bridge is, and there's going to be a connectivity as well towards the back of the development. My question is, what type of landscaping will be, and what security will be there for people to walk and, in the evenings?
In terms of planting, I think the words lush and verdant have been mentioned. There'll be the aspect lends itself to open sunny positions, but there are elements of shade tolerant plants that will be required. And again, I refer to kind of right place, right plant. We've done a lot of work to provide a connectivity between those planting species, so there's continuity between what goes on the green wall to the horizontal planting as well. And in terms of security and open access, it's not a gated area of green space. The idea being that it's a transient space. People can sit and dwell within that green space, or they can choose just to walk as a shortcut, but it is an open space.
I would add to that, Simon, that the building will have extensive CCTV coverage, and the building itself will be manned with 24-hour security. So there is an on-site presence 24 hours in the building.
you for that. Councillor Dye, please.
Thank you. On the plan, it seems to suggest that you're intending to connect to the district heating network, but there isn't anything. I don't think anybody said anything about that.
You're absolutely correct. It's not there yet. So what we've done is we've made allowance within the site to be able to accommodate that if and when that comes online in the future. So all we can do now is take cognizance of it, make allowance for it, but there is nothing to connect to at the minute. So that's what we've done.
Thank you. So can I ask, in the meantime, what plans would you have? Is there an alternative plan for heating the building?
Yeah, so at the minute, what we've done is we've chosen the most sustainable product that's available to us for this building. So that's air source heat pumps, with we have PVs and 4-pipe fan coil units. So that will be the primary heating strategy for the building, which is for this building the most sustainable product on the market at this minute.
Any more questions from members? Councillor Jones, please.
I know this site quite well. I worked on it for over 20 years. And so I know the difficulties. I generally welcome this, by the way. This site's been empty for 19 years. And I know that because I was the official, had the misfortune to have to deal with the closure. But there are a couple of questions. One is the proximity to the railway line. Now, you may not think that that's noisy, but having worked at that end of that building, I assure you it is. And that will be a noise issue that you may want to think about. The other thing is the poster, which I think, if I remember rightly, will say "Welcome to Leeds" on it. So do you have any plans to remove that? I've several other bits before I get to that bit. The other one is you talked about the heritage issue. How do you intend to do that? Because I get sick as an engineer of watching plants close and then no reference to what's been there before. I'm happy to supply you with probably over 1,000 pictures of what's gone on there before, if you want to use some of that. The other issue that's really concerning me is when you talk about the cycleway. Now, if you look at that bridge, to be honest, I don't think there's anything you can do to make a cycle path come down there because it's quite narrow on both sides. I think that's an enormous difficulty. The other thing is access onto the canal, which most cyclists will be using, I would suspect, to go either into Leeds or to proceed up towards Kirkstall. At the moment, the access to that is quite poor. Is there any plans to improve that?
I'll try and remember all of those. So first of all, but I'll start with the last question on the cycleway. We're very much working within the land that we control. So we take on board and we probably share your comments with that. What we're doing is looking to work with the council transport team to say this is what we are able to deliver on the site and how does that tie in with your network, east and west of that. And we don't, I think, well, we're working on it, Rich, I think is the answer. So.
Good afternoon, Richard Murphy, Masodi, highways engineer. Yeah, I think in terms of the cycle route, you're quite correct, councillor. In terms of the bridge going over, there is constraints in terms of the width and what can be provided. Leeds City Council's highways team are working hard to improve the provision along Whitehall Road in itself. And what we're looking at doing and the designs that we've pulled together thus far have sought to do what we can do in front of our own site in a position where we come along and standalone deliver that, or there's a scheme either side of it. So we're looking to make sure that we can do what we can do within our grasp. And then we will obviously speak to the council. And as the aspirations come forward with Whitehall Road and the Get Living scheme, if that comes forward, we'll seek to work and tie in with those aspirations. We can access the towpath via the pocket park, and it's level access to access the towpath in that way. But like Paul said, we are quite restricted in what we can do, and we are seeking to do the best we can.
Thanks, Rich. In terms of the heritage of the site itself, what we'll try to do is address that through the materiality of the brick and the metal. That's carried through the building, but also the garden. And you can see the planters are, like Corten type planters. We would welcome any information you have on the heritage of the site. And if we can weave that into the landscaping, we would absolutely be delighted to do that. We'd love to introduce more recycled materials to the scheme, to be perfectly honest. And if there's a way we could do that through the history of the site, we'd love to hear how we might be able to do that.
The other one is the noise off the railways, because it is considered.
Good point. We have an acoustician, we have a noise and vibration consultant on site at the end of this week who will be pulling together the information. They're working with the council just now to set the parameters for those surveys. And once we have that information, that will then feed into what we need to do in terms of the facade or the terrace or anything like that. So that it's underway, but we don't know the answer yet. I think you mentioned the board as well. There's a big billboard there. The intention would very much be that that comes away because it looks a bit tatty, to be honest, and we'd rather, you know, use that space for quality landscaping.
Okay, Councillor Jones. Can I say that that's really a good point raised by Councillor Jones. I think it would be nice if we had a recognition of what was on the site and a heritage plaque or something. It doesn't have to be big and elaborate, but you know, it's something that you really should consider. And I'm sure you're nodding in agreement. So I'm sure when it comes forward, we will see something. I haven't seen any more questions. Can we move to comments? We can move to comments. Comments from members, please. John, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I think it seems like a really good quality, and aesthetically, I think the building seems really good, and the green landscaping as well as the roof terrace and the shared amenities like the gym. I think it's a good considerable project going forward.
Okay, any other comments? Katie, please.
Yeah, just to say that from a climate point of view, I welcome all the additions that you've described in your presentation.
Can we move on to the questions that's been set for us? I think I get a feeling that there's a lot of satisfaction on this one. I do particularly like the roof garden as well. I'm really pleased that Councillor Gruen raised that and brought the slide back up so you could properly explain it to me. I never like to stop people in full flow, but you were considerably over, and I had allowed quite a bit of leniency. But as I said at the time, we usually get there in the end. Members will ask the questions that they need answering, but it looks really great. Okay, if we can move on then to page 39, starting with 9.1. Do members consider that the proposed use of the site for office with ground floor cafe workspace is appropriate in principle? Yes. Agree, yes. Yep. Do members support the emergent layout, scale and design of the development? Yep. Do members support the emerging public pedestrian route and landscaping around the site? Yep. And do members have any comments on the proposed parking arrangements at the site? Katie, please.
Yeah, just to say I welcome the fact that it seems to be really favouring active travel.
Excellent. So I think that's yes, 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 and yes. So thank you for your presentation, and I can only wish you a good afternoon now. I think we'll be finishing, but we look forward to it coming back, and I hope we've given you some ideas to consider. It's nice to see so much green space and landscaping. As you may well know, the last site was a lot more constrained than that, but thank you.